else think it's odd? I hope your Thanksgivings were amazing, by the way. But anyone else think it's odd that, at Thanksgiving, it's this day where we're thankful. We're like intentionally grateful. Like it's a day where we pause and we reflect. And at our dinner table, we just ask the question like, hey, what are you grateful for? What's one thing you're thankful for? And everyone kind of went around. And then that's the conversation that's happening in Thanksgiving. And then the other conversation that's subsequently happening at the same dinner table that we just talked about what we're grateful for is, hey, what are you planning on getting on Black Friday? You going tonight? You going tomorrow morning early? It's like, and like all day long for this Thanksgiving, I'm like on Amazon looking at these Black Friday deals and on Best Buy and Walmart. I'm like, this is supposed to be a day where I'm just like thankful and I'm just content. And yet my heart is so like sucked into this moment where I can't even actually have a day where I'm thankful because I'm just wanting these new deals that are, you get what I'm saying? It's so weird. And then you get Cyber Monday, on this Monday and that's happening. And if that's, and then it's like, then Giving Tuesday is last. And if you got anything left over, you could maybe give. So, it's like this wild, bizarre scenario, and yet it's so timely, I think, for the verses that we're studying this morning. And so James comes in this morning through these verses, and he addresses two sensitive topics: our future and our finances. Our planning and our budget, basically. And so for those of us who love to plan, who love control and need and organize, this is the challenge from James to submit to the fact that you aren't God. You aren't God. And that your life here and now, however great it is ultimately brief, and it's a mist. That however great you are at planning, that you ultimately don't have any true control. And so for those of you who love money, this is James's plea to look at our finances in a completely different way. To not be so fixed on what we can accumulate here, or have our identity in the number that our bank account shows, but to invest greatly into eternity, to our home that we can't see right now, but is waiting for us. And so for those of us that are obsessed with our future and our finances, James comes in, he's going to pastor us, as he's been doing as we study this book. And so the main idea, the hope for this morning is that fixing our eyes on forever forms our future and our finances. Fixing our eyes on forever, looking at eternity, forms, changes, molds the way we see our future and the way we see our finances. And so if you got your Bibles, James 4 is where we're going to start. And you can just look, we'll just read verse 13 to kick it off. He says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. So the first thing we'll look at the kind of two parts of the sermon, look at our future, then we'll go on to our finances. So our future for right now, our future in light of forever. Now, when's the last time that you were vastly aware of your lack of control? That you were just aware, I don't have any control. For me, the first instance that comes to mind is when my kids are sick. Any parent in the room can probably agree there's like no worse, helpless, uncontrollable moment than when your kids are sick, or for grandparents in the room when your grandkids are sick. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can give them Tylenol, bring them to the doctor, but there's some sense where it's like, we just have to wait this thing out. When Haddon was 8 months old, he spent a week in the hospital with RSV and pneumonia. It was like the worst week ever. I had no control and I hated it. And I thought I thought I didn't really care about control, and I was okay. And I'm like, no, I want control. I thought I was an anxious person. I'm like, oh no, I'm anxious and this is terrible. The other instance that comes to mind where I was aware of my lack of control was our church trying to buy Kelly's Carpet Building on 46th and Vine. And we did everything we could. Like we prayed, we gave, we sought Jesus for it. And ultimately we just couldn't control what the bank would offer us, what they would be willing to drop the price to, what our construction bid was, what people were willing to give. We did everything, but ultimately we couldn't control whether or not we got the building, and we didn't, And it's like, I don't know what's next, and we're just praying and asking God. But what's a moment for you where you were vastly aware that you didn't have any control? Now, what's odd is we'd all agree that there are things in our lives that we can't control, right? But then we also have things that we actually subconsciously believe or consciously believe that we do control. Our finances, our plans, our schedule, the friendships we choose to invest in. And there's something really sneaky that we love about those things that we can kind of properly, neatly control and organize. We're like, this is set, this is stable, right? And yet verse 13 is going, you don't have any control. Even over the things that you think you have control over, you don't have control over those things either. And yet he's calling out this temptation for us to plan and to talk about our future so definitively. I'm going to do this year. I'm going to do this year. And James 4:13 comes in and goes, come all of you who say today or tomorrow we'll go and do this and that, go in such a town, trade, and we'll make a profit. I want to be clear, this isn't just calling out people who love to plan. By the way, this isn't just like the type A, let's get a plan together. This is also the type B, like let's go with the flow, because I've never met a single person that doesn't want control in some regard. I've never met a person who's like, I love chaos. I love just not knowing what's going to happen. No, and so this is a call to everybody. But I also want to be clear, God isn't anti-planning. Okay, so type A, take a breath for a second, okay? He hasn't wrecked your entire life, okay? He's not anti-planning. He's not in heaven, arms crossed, shaking his head at our attempts to be prudent and to be responsible and to be thoughtful about what's coming up in our lives. But what's particularly wrong with verse 13? A couple of things just briefly. He comes at verse 13 is like the problem was their confidence in their plan. The rigidity of their plan, the absence of God in their plan. They're like, this is what we're doing, this is when we're doing it, and this is our plan. And there's no mention of God. And so you see all of that to go, plans in and of themselves aren't innately bad, but when they're void of God, when they're strict and there's no compromise to say God could do whatever he wants, that's when it starts to be problematic, when we think we have control. But then look at verse 14. He goes, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. So the picture that James is painting is that control is a mirage. Like if you think of a mirage, it's like the classic pictures, you're in the desert and you're like stumbling and you're all by yourself, you don't have any water and you're dehydrated and you're thirsty and all that stuff. And then you're like, oh my gosh, and you see this like lush body of water and these palm trees and these birds flying, and you're like, oh, and then you're walking and you're crawling there, and as you get there, you realize it was just a cloud. It was just a figment of your imagination to think that there was actually water there. And that's what he's saying control is. He goes, you want to make your plan? Verse 13? Here's verse 14. I'll just wreck your plans and show you that you actually don't have any control. It was a figment of your imagination. And that all of our planning that we do is really just a facade that we put up to act like we have more control than we really do. And so why don't we have control? Well, the two things he focuses in on verse 14 is because of uncertainty and brevity. The two things in our lives that impact control is uncertainty and brevity. So look at verse 14. First part of it again, he says, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. Now, if planning, catch this, was a problem 2,000 years ago, oh, we're going to do this and that, and we're going to plan something. How much easier is it for us today to plan than it was for them? How much more pervasive of a problem would it be today than it was for them? Listen, back in the day, 2,000 years ago, they had daily food. Like they had their opportunity where you went and caught your food or whatever, or killed your food, and then you ate it that night. Like there was like if you don't work or you don't get paid, you're not eating that night. And yet we've got deep freezers. We've got 2 deep freezers, and you can, and you can keep food good there for months and years. We've got stocked grocery stores, and we've got pantries, and we've got fast food restaurants. Like think about how easy it would be for us to think we have control in regards to something simple like that, food. They never had that back in the day. In Jesus' original context. We've got a weather app on our phone. You want to plan something next Sunday? Well, just look 7 days out and you can know what the precipitation is, the humidity is going to be, the temperature, and you can plan it out. They never had that, right? They had stars they were looking at, like some random thing. And I mean, we've got life insurance, we've got home insurance, we've got car insurance, we've got appliance insurance, we've got couch insurance from NFM. I've got a buddy who has dog insurance. I mean, it's just like, hey, we've got insurance on everything. And so you're approaching your day like, if I get in a car, if the hail is coming and it hits my roof, that's okay. I got insurance. Hits my car, that's okay, I got insurance. If something happens, if I die, Kristen's gonna be taken care of, I got life insurance. Like you see what I'm saying, this control of like, I've got everything figured out. If anything happens, I've got insurance for it. You see how much more pervasive it is. Oh, and by the way, James, who's he talking to? The dispersed Jews because of persecution. The refugees that were in Jerusalem, the early believers that got pushed out because of persecution, that have left their homes and left their families. So if you look at that scenario, you're like, you have no control. And yet James is calling them out for trying to plan their lives out perfectly. And I'm going, wait. If that was that much of a problem for them, if it was that serious for them, how much more serious would that be for us? This temptation to plan and think we have our whole lives figured out and know exactly what our future holds. But I want you to internalize this for a second. The verse says, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. Hear me, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You don't. Stocks could crash. The relationship could end. Your family member could pass away. You could get in a car accident. You could get laid off. You get the best news of your life. You could find out you're pregnant after years of trying. You could get the raise. You could bump into a long lost friend. Jesus could come back. Anything could happen, but you just don't know. You just don't know. And if we're honest, we hate that. We hate that. Not admitting that we don't know what tomorrow will bring produces anxiety in our hearts, right? Oh, I don't like that. I liked my plan. I thought I knew it was going to happen. Not admitting that we don't know what tomorrow will bring produces this sense of insecuritiness. Where are we really that small? Are we really that out of control where we don't know what tomorrow will bring? Yeah, that's the reality. Warren Wiersbe said, man cannot control future events. He has neither the wisdom to see the future nor the power to control the future. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. So uncertainty is the first thing that kind of messes with the mirage of our control. The second thing is the end of verse 14. He continues, says, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. And he says, what is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. So the first thing was uncertainty. The second thing he shows is brevity. Brevity, right? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Now, throughout the Bible, I didn't really know this, but there's metaphors all throughout that are describing the shortness of our life. In the book of Job alone, there are over 5 metaphors he uses for the shortness of our life, for how short and brief and what a mist it is, right? And so it's short, it's small. Now, Jean Calment is the oldest recorded person in modern history. She lived to be 122 years old and 164 days. She was born in 1875 and she died in 1997. So Jean Calment, she was kicking it, right? Now, the average life expectancy for men is 71 and the average life expectancy for women is 81, which I'm surprised that gap isn't bigger because men, I don't know how we have stayed alive. We just do some ridiculous things. But anyways, but let's just say, so James says our life is brief, or our life is a mist in 2 particular ways. Number one, it's a mist because it's brief compared to eternity. It's brief. That's what a mist is. It's brief compared to eternity. So let's just say, let's pick somebody out in the room and say you beat Jean Calment's record, and you live to be 123 years old. Right? All of us are gone, like at that point, but you're rocking it. You're doing great. You got like 4 generations of great grandkids. It's a whole deal, right? 123 years is nothing compared to eternity. That's so short. Even if you're the oldest person in history, that's still nothing compared to eternity. When we've spent 3,000 years in eternity, your life here on earth will seem like a Monday in connection to the whole month of December. When you spent 6,000 years in eternity, your life will seem like a single second in comparison to a minute. And then that's just getting started. You're talking millions of years in the glory of Jesus or separated from him that's eternity. There's no comparison. Life is a mist. It's a little spritz of water compared to the Pacific Ocean of eternity, right? It's brief. Like life is so short. It's not only uncertain, it's brief. The second reason that it's a mist is because it's here and then it's gone. He says it just vanishes. It's there and then it just vanishes. And sometimes that's sudden. I hate this reality, but each and every single one of us has a story of a loved one, someone close, that passed away before they should have. Like even in our church family, the last few years, we've seen babies go meet Jesus. A 4-year-old boy go meet Jesus. A mom of 6 go meet Jesus. A young grandma go meet Jesus. And I hate that. Those are the heartbreaks, right? Just like, God, why don't you have more time with them here? And yet it's just life is a mist and it's unpredictable. And in the same way we can't control our lives, we can't control our deaths. That's not meant to be morbid or depressing. It's meant to wake us up. And yet we know life's a mist. It's brief. Even if you beat Jean's record, it's still a mist. It's still brief. And it's unpredictable. Anything could happen. And yet we live as if it's not a mist, it's a waterfall. And it's just going to keep coming. We live like we're invincible, especially young people. It's just like, yeah, I'm gold. It's going to be great. And it's like, no, man, literally anything can happen. And James would look at us and go, you're a fool. Like Psalm 90 verse 12 says, teach us to number our days. But I love he doesn't say teach us to number our years. He goes, days. That's how short and a mist your life really is. So we just can't control when we die. We never know. I just saw a post of a 99-year-old woman that smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, that she's still rocking it, you know? I'm like, how? Like, that's crazy. And then super heartbreaking story of a guy in his 40s, a dad, loves Jesus, worked out every day, passed away from a heart attack. It's just like, you just don't know. And in life, it's uncertain, it's brief. You don't have any control. It could go in any minute, and anything can happen. So James takes uncertainty, and he takes brevity as a sledgehammer, and he messes with our mirage of control. He just breaks it all apart because you don't have the control that you think you do. But I want you to notice in both our future, in the verses, and our finances, he starts with the phrase, come now. And what he means in that, if you look at verse 13 and then in 5:1, come now is saying, this isn't condemnation, this is an invitation. This is me saying, come, like change, like fix your eyes on forever, and then that will change the way you see your future and your finances. So the way I see it, you got a couple options. Number one, you can refuse and reject what James just said, what we just talked about. You can refuse to believe that you live without control and that your life is a mist. You can reject all of that and live in arrogance and ignorance as if you are the first person in history that's finally gotten control. Or you can release and you can realize that you don't have control and that God is in control and you aren't God. So I want to get really practical with what this would actually look like to live in light of these verses. So look at verse 15. James, our practical brother, goes straight into it. Hey, this is what it looks like. It's not even ethereal. He goes instead of verse 13. In light of verse 14, here's verse 15. This is what you should say. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will do this or that. Okay? So, Deo Volente is Latin for God willing. Deo Volente. So, Lord willing. We'll say that on three. Deo Volente, okay? 1, 2, 3. Deo Volente. Okay, significant phrase to understand. The Puritans back in the day loved this. They said it all the time. The Methodists in the early kind of revival seasons, this was key, and they would say it all the time. And almost every letter they would write, at the bottom they would write DV, standing for Deo Volente, if God wills. And when they would send out stuff about, hey, an event that they're doing or whatever, they would put the bottom DV. If God wills, God willing, this is what will happen. And Paul threaded this idea of verse 15 all throughout his life. In Acts 18:21, he promised the Ephesian church, I'll come back if it's God's will. In 1 Corinthians 4:19, he said, I'll come to you if the Lord is willing, Deo Volente. But there's also lots of other instances where Deo Volente isn't mentioned at all. In Romans 15:28, Paul talks about finishing his plans and then going to Spain, and he never tacks on that little DV phrase, right? Like, hey, just so you know. But the point of it here isn't that God is looking for the right words, but he's wanting the right mindset. The right heart. See, you could slap on that phrase as a little platitude on every conversation you ever have, and it could be meaningless. But what he's looking for is a real heart posture that lives Deo Volente. God, here's my plan. I'm going to submit that to you, but I trust you. And wherever you lead, I'm going to go. Whatever you want, I'm going to do. This is the reality where it's not just the right words, but it's the right phrase that you can repeat, but it's the right heart and mindset within that. But the hard truth is that many of us live like practical atheists. Like if you were just in regard to God's will for our lives, like in the way we go about big decisions. Like if we were just being completely honest, we looked at someone who doesn't believe in Jesus at all, and then if you believe in Jesus, and went, is there any difference on the way you approach big decisions? And I'm not just saying like, yeah, I've prayed about it, but a real gut level, and often for a lot of us, there isn't a big difference. It's like that something's got to change there. And to be honest, Deo Volente is scary, isn't it? It seems slow. It seems ambiguous. It seems, how do I know what God wants in this moment, right? And so we just kind of avoid it, and we make our own plans, and we assume that they're great. And so there are two postures to plan and look at our future. So to get practical, the first one is what we often say, and it's to say to God, here's my plan. Will you bless it? That's option one, right? And so when we pray in reference to our lives, it's not to ask God what we should do or where we should go, but to ask his blessing on what we've already decided, right? And so Bob Walls is a mentor of mine and a friend. He's an elder in our church. And when I ask Bob for advice, I'll sit him down or whatever, he'll always go, okay, are you checking in or are you checking through? And I'm like, Bob, don't. He's like, no, are you checking in? Are you checking through? Checking in means you haven't made your decision yet. Checking in means you really want to know what I think, and what I say could impact your decision. That's checking in. Checking through is you really just want me to say yes to whatever you want and be your yes man so that you can say that you asked Bob and you got his stamp of approval. That's checking through. Now my little brother, he went to Omaha yesterday with my dad to look at an electric bike, but he brought my dad along to get a second pair of eyes on this bike that he wanted to get. And when they see it, my dad's like, you should not buy this bike. This is trash. But then they started getting into conflict because I think Caden was wanting my dad. He was just wanting to check through. He wasn't wanting to check in. He wanted my dad's insight, but he wanted to know what my dad thought, but he wanted my dad to think the same way he thought, right? And it's like, I don't know about you, but I'm so guilty of this with other people and with God, where I feel like I'm always checking through. I'm not checking in. If there's a big decision in my life or something I need a discernment on, coming to him, God, this is what I'm thinking about doing or buying or whatever it is, and or saying, and I'll wait maybe for a couple minutes, and then my phone buzzes, and I'm checking out this thing. I'm coming back. Oh, it didn't thunder. I think we're good. Okay, cool, awesome. All right, we'll see you next week. And it's like, and it's like that's not Deo Volente. That's not. This is what you ought to say, right? So here's the other option. Here's the other posture. Rather than saying, "Here's my plan, will you bless it?" we say, "God, what's your plan, and I'll bless you." Rather than, "Here's my plan, bless it," we patiently go to God and say, "I want to know what you want. You know better than I do. My relationships, my job choice, my finances, my purchases, my time." A guy in our church, literally a couple weeks ago, got a disciple, had a job offer. He's established his career, had a job offer that would double his pay. Literally double what he currently makes. And we're like, in that scenario, we're like, boom, slap on DV on it, and then go for it, like, yeah, God wills. I think he wills it. And we go, but he actually prayed, and he actually submitted to God. He said, "I want to know what you want me to do in this scenario." And God told him no. And he turned down the job. And he's making half of what he could be making right now. And I'm just like, dude, that's Deo Volente. That's God, you do whatever you want. If you will it, I want it. I want to believe that what you want for me is better than what I want for me. That's the difference. And that's why James follows verse 15 with 16 and 17. So if you look at these two ending verses, he says, "As it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. And so whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is a sin." The response to verse 15 is to say, if the Lord wills, in other words, whatever you will, I want to do, I want to be true in my life. And he goes, I don't have any space to boast. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I don't have a plan to boast of. It's not great. And then verse 17 is saying, if you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, it's a sin. And in other words, if you know the will of God and you don't give into it, if you accept that job that God told you not to, you're in that relationship with God. That's a sin. It's not just, sin isn't just doing bad things. It's not doing the good things that God calls us to do. And it's saying, man, Deo Volente is going, God, whatever you call me to do, I'm going to submit to that. And that's what I want to be true of my life. This is what Jesus did, by the way. In Luke 22, verse 42, in Luke 22 in general, he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's prepping to go to the cross. And it's an intense moment where he's actually internalizing everything that he's going to have to do, the ocean of wrath he's going to have to drink for me and you, our sin we committed, that he's going to have to take on, the wrath of God. And he goes, if there's any other way, and the will of God was like, no. The Father was like, this is the plan. And in Luke 22, verse 42, Jesus goes, not my will, but yours be done. That's the posture of our lives that goes, I want my will to line up with your will because I know it's better. And because of Jesus' submission to that, he goes to the cross. He dies the death we should have died, paid for the sins that we committed, so that did what we could never do for ourselves so that we could have eternity with him. That's the invitation, that our future wouldn't just be marked by our mere little plans and our facade of control, but our future be marked by a loving, intimate relationship with God that would last not just for our life, for the 100 year, whatever, how many years we get, but for eternity, forever, because Jesus submitted to the will of the Father, and the Father planned it, and the Son paid for it, and the Spirit now empowers us to believe that beautiful truth of the good news. And so Proverbs 16:9, last thing I'll say to the future, it was a really significant verse to us, our elders, as we prayed through the building, Kelly's carpet, and tried to buy it. Proverbs 16:9 says, the heart of man plans his ways, but God establishes his steps. And it's like, I think it's such an accurate verse where we want to plan our ways. We want to kind of lay out, this is what I want to do. And God's like, I'm just going to give you the next step. And it's like what he did to Abraham. Hey, go this way. Okay, where am I going? Well, just go this way. Okay, and so we want the whole map. We want the whole end of the GPS, and God goes, just go north, Okay, and just take that one step, and he's meeting us there. So as you're assessing the will of God in your life, I wish I'd go into more of how that is. I think some of it is just a daily, step-by-step, lockstep relationship with God going, you have access, not just the big decisions in my life, but the very mundane, simple things I want to be submitted, and DV is marked over every single aspect of my life. So that's future in light of forever. And then next is he transitions to our finances in light of. So if I haven't stepped on your toes, going to now. James is, but it's James, not me. Just look at verse 1. Really weird way to start talk on finances. He says, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you." Weep and howl is literally a primal language. It's literally what a wolf would do. It's like this thing. Weep and you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. And so, unrequited love is that phrase. What that means is loving someone that doesn't love you back. Okay. In the old 1600s poet Abraham Cowley wrote, "Of all pains, the greatest pain is to love, but to love in vain." It's unrequited love, to not get love back. And there may not be a better example of unrequited love than the love we have for money, right? Like we work jobs we hate because we love money. We leave jobs we love because we can get more money somewhere else. We spend less time with the family we love to spend more time at work because we love money more than that. And I just want to say, we love money, but it doesn't love us. It's never once loved us. It uses us and takes advantage of us. And so let me ask you this. What would you tell a friend who kept going back to an abusive relationship with another man? Like she keeps going back, and all he's done is hurt her and abused her and promised but never fulfilled, and all he's done is taken from her and hurt her and abused her. You would go, please wake up. Please open your eyes. Leave this love and never come back. This is not real. This is not worth it. You deserve better. All of us would say that. And James in these verses is saying, break up with your love of money. It doesn't love you back. It's beaten and abused and hurt you time and time again. Open your eyes. Break up with your love of money. It's a bad lover. And so biblically, what was really captivating this week for me was seeing that being rich is more of a liability than a luxury, biblically. And Kent Hughes said it this way. He said that being rich or money isn't an advantage, it's a spiritual handicap. So track with me for a second. In Mark chapter 10, this rich young ruler, he's got it all, right? He's rich, he's young, he's a ruler. And he comes up to Jesus and goes, "Hey, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" Which do is the wrong verb in that sentence. But Jesus goes, "Okay, I'll track with you." And he asks him some questions. And the guy answers all of them right. He's like, "Wow, you've been to Sunday school. Good job." And he goes, "Okay, last thing." The guy goes, "Cool." He's got his notepad out. And Jesus goes, "All right, I want you to sell everything you have, give it away to the poor, or give it all away to the poor, and come follow me." And the guy kind of drops his notebook and looks at Jesus. And it says, one of the saddest verses in the Bible is, he went away sad because his wealth was great. And Jesus turns to his disciples and goes, when he's walking away, goes, "How hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God?" And if the old hymn goes, "Nothing in my hand I bring, simply to the cross I cling," how hard is it for people that have so much to hold, so much money and houses and cars, whatever, to let go of all that and go, "Oh, I just want the cross." And he's going, it's more of a spiritual handicap than it is an advantage. And so for the wealthy in this room, and a lot of you are wealthy and don't acknowledge it. I'm just saying, if you got a home, if you got a savings account, like, you're probably there. And there's some uniquely wealthy, like bigger net worth people in the room. But whatever that is, if you're wealthy, treat your money like you would treat an adopted dog that has a history of biting. Like don't get too close to it. Like, keep your face away from it. Don't interrupt it while it's eating. It bites hard. And for those of you in the room who aren't wealthy but are dreaming of that day, you need to get a different dream. Like, you just It's like you're fighting to get in a cage with a bear. Handling financial success is hard. I mean, there's biblical examples of it going well and biblical examples of it going terribly. There's examples all around us of it being amazing and of it going really poorly. But it's easy to be possessed by your possessions. It's easy to make money your master. It's easy to fall into the trap of unrequited love for money. And I want to be clear, the Bible never says that having a lot of money is a sin. So if you're uniquely wealthy, don't feel bad about it, ashamed about it. Abraham, David, Job, Josiah, Joseph of Arimathea, our girl Lydia in Acts 16, they were all rich, they were all wealthy, and they all loved God and were used by him in amazing ways. And so 1 Timothy 6:10, the classic verse that people love to misquote, doesn't say that money is the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. And so in these verses, subsequent from verse 1, he's going, hey, weep and howl for the miseries that your riches are bringing upon you. He's saying it's not money is doing this, it's the love of money that's doing these things. And you need to know there's two definitive truths about the love of money that will happen. Two things he draws out in these verses. Number one, it's corrupting, and number two, it's corroding. Money, love money is corrupting and it is corroding. So verse 4, look it out with me. He says in verse 5, or chapter 5, he says, behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. So the first thing he says money is corrupting is what the love of money will make you do to get more. What the love of money will make you do to get more. So James gives an example of a farmer not paying his workers, but keeping that money for himself. But he's drawing out that poisonous addiction we have to more money, that we will compromise our integrity to get more, whatever it is. And so for some in the room, it may look like you're not paying your employees fairly, so you can make more. For others, it may look like spending less time with your kids so that you can make more, or it's stepping on your coworkers to get ahead. For some, it may look like cheating on your taxes or stealing from your company. But the love of money makes us do crazy things to get more. We just want more. We'll do whatever it takes. The second thing, verse 5, he bites in deeper and he goes, you have lived on earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You've condemned and murdered the righteous person. He doesn't resist you. And so not only what the love of money will make you do to get more, but what the love of money will make you forget. This is what, verse 5, what the love of money will make you forget. And the idea here about this living in luxury is that you're not living for heaven, and you're not longing for heaven. So Kristen and I, a few months ago, were in Mexico and an all-inclusive resort with some friends, officiated a wedding. It was amazing. I just want to be really clear, transparent with all of you. When we're laying on the bed by the ocean with the waves crashing and the people bringing, food and all this stuff, there was never a moment where Kristen and I were like, man, I just really miss our house projects. Oh, I miss the cold weather, and it just gives me so much joy scraping the ice off our windshield, in the mornings. Like, I just miss that. And there's nothing to do here. I just really miss our busy schedule. No, we're like, should we just put on a thing on Facebook just says, does anyone want to watch our kids? They're really cute. They're nice. They love mac and cheese. We'll pay you. Can we extend the stay a little bit? Like, that's the picture that James is giving in verse 5. That you have set your life up in such a way, hear me say this, that you're reluctant about heaven. Or at least you're indifferent about eternity. You're not yearning for Jesus to come back. You're not waiting for that day. You're not working to hasten his return by sharing the gospel among the nations. You're fine with his delay. You're like, this is pretty good here. And you're soaking up the luxuries of this earth, indulging in everything it has in it, completely stuffed by the buffet of this world. And it says that you've got fattened hearts on the day of slaughter. You got spiritual love handles, okay? It's a problem, right? And listen, it's serious because it's this picture of God coming back and saying, who's been waiting for me? And the picture of this fattened heart is that you're sitting in the corner with chocolate all over your face, sitting in a lounger with an umbrella in your drink, and God's going, I'm here, and you're completely oblivious to the fact that eternity has come and judgment has come. And he's looking at yourself going, what are you doing? And you don't have a heart that's ready for God and it's wanting God. You have a heart that's fat from what the world can feed on. And he's going, you just got to wake up to that, of what what riches will make you forget that the eternity is coming, that forever is here. Psalm 62 verse 10 says, if riches increase, set not your heart on them. Like as they grow and they accumulate, don't set your heart on them. Don't forget what's real. And I want to be clear, what this verse doesn't mean is that we can't have nice things. What this verse doesn't mean is that we don't get to enjoy nice vacations or nice meals or experiences. This verse doesn't mean is that we should all live in poverty. Remember, the context of this is verse 4 that talks about defrauding somebody or keeping blessings from somebody. That's what verse 4 is talking about. So as you personally assess what this verse actually means is if you are sinfully living in excessive luxury, the question becomes, are your finances only about you? Like, are they benefiting anybody else other than you? I'm not just your family. Oh, I give my kids an allowance. No. I'm talking about people that don't benefit you. Are you benefiting them? Are you generous towards yourself and stingy towards others? Have you compromised your lifestyle of what you could live at to bless other people's lives, to invest in his kingdom? In this verse, it's talking about eternity. So when you're on that beach that's amazing and you're enjoying it, do you think and pause in that moment and go, however great this is, eternity is going to be better? When you bite into that medium rare steak, perfectly seasoned, oh, this tastes amazing, but it's going to taste better in eternity, right? So money can be corrupting. The last one is money is corroding. So look at verse 2 and 3. He says, your riches have rotted. This is why you should weep and howl. Your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You've laid up treasure in the last days. So the ancient world really had 3 sources of wealth: harvested grain, clothing, and precious metals and jewels. And James grabs each one of those and says, they're all done. They're all worthless. Your riches have rotted, the moths have eaten your clothes, and gold and silver are corroded. In today's context, James would say something like, your car has rusted, your house burnt down, and all of your investments crashed. Like that's what he would say. And then he goes, you have laid up treasure in these last days. You have this treasure here on earth in the last day. In treasure, the idea is that it is the accumulation of everything you've worked for. It's the trophy that you have given your life to. It's what you've worked your fingers down in the bone for. It's what you've bled for, sweat for, cried for. And he goes, hey, that treasure, it's worthless. That's why verse 1 says, weep and howl. The treasure you've given your life to, worked hard for, it's worthless. It's meaningless. It's completely corroded. Now, it's crazy. If you drive through the center of Lincoln, there's all these huge houses that are all kind of worn down. And it's crazy to me to think about the fact that one day those were mansions. Those were a spectacle in our city. Those people paid top dollar for those. And over the last 100+ years, the foundation has crumbled. The time has taken its toll. Termites have eaten, and now it's an eyesore. And it's like, and that'll happen to every single house you've ever seen. That's just is true. Everything will rot. It's like if you look at the treasure, they'll all decay at some space. Now, a couple months ago, my wife Kristen and I bought an acreage on the edge of town, and she's like Joanna Gaines. It's crazy. I'm not Chip at all, but she is Joanna Gaines, and so she makes up both of us. But we've bought and sold over the last 6 years several different houses, and we've renovated them and fixed them up, and we've sold them. And God's been gracious with the market and everything, where we sold those houses and we're able to move that money and buy this house in this space, and it's amazing. It's like humbling to think about. It's just such a gift from Jesus. And so we had our staff over this last week, all of our staff, 30 of them, to eat breakfast and to worship and to pray. And afterwards, one of the girls was like, Austin, this is literally like my dream home. This is a dream. And what a gift. And I was like, yeah, like, thanks. It really is. It really is a dream. It's a couple acres. We've done a lot of work to it. It's coming together. And I was like, but I really have to guard my heart. And she's like, why? I'm like, this is not my home. Like, heaven is my home. And as we get nicer cars or nicer homes, the temptation increases for me to think that, like, this is my home. And I want to pour everything I have into it, and I want to get comfortable in it, and I want to die in it. And it's like, no, like, my home is actually in heaven, and Jesus is preparing it for me right now. No matter how much work I do for this or how it transforms, that's my home, and I need to guard my heart to remember that. It's the same thing for all of us. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 6, 19-20. He says, don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. So here's what James is saying to each and every one of us. This is the come now that he says in verse 1. Convert your treasure. Like, hear me say this, please. Convert your treasure. If you're old enough to remember Blockbuster, okay, it was a movie rental store. You didn't just go like this, and you walked in, you searched the aisles, you grabbed one, you grabbed some Twizzlers and some popcorn on the way out, and you left, and it was an amazing experience, okay? Now, imagine you had $100,000 invested in Blockbuster in 2004. At the time, Blockbuster was thriving. They were worth about $6 billion, okay? But you end up selling all of your Blockbuster stock, which seemed like it was going up and to the right, all the $100,000, you take it all out, and you invest in this new company called Netflix, okay? Blockbuster, this whole thing, okay, I'm gonna go. And Netflix at the time, stock in 2004, you could buy one stock for $1.35 a share. Okay, $1.35. So with your $100,000 taken out of Blockbuster, you get 74,000 shares of Netflix in 2004. 6 years later, in 2010, Blockbuster files for bankruptcy, and eventually their 9,000 stores globally close, and there's nothing to show for it. I think there's like an Airbnb in Ohio of one of them that you can stay at or something. So that's it. But today, 2022, that $100,000 converted from Blockbuster stock to Netflix stock got you 74,000 shares, which today at $286 a share, that's $21 million that you would have. Or you could just keep your Blockbuster stock and have some good memories and a cool story, right? But end up having nothing at all. This is what James is saying. This is it. This is what he's saying about your treasure on earth. Convert it. Like pull all of your stock out of this world and lay it all up in heaven. Convert it to the things that last forever, that can't tank, that can't be stolen. And I want to pause for a second and just say, like, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for everyone who's invested into what Jesus is doing in our church. Like, and not even our church, but God's kingdom at large. I want you to know your treasure is not corroding. These verses are not true of you. Your treasure is reaping massive dividends eternally. It's blown up. Your treasure isn't new countertops, a new car, a new home, more square footage, a nice vacation. It's real people meeting the real Jesus. It's the hundreds of baptisms we've seen over the years. It's the churches that we've planted and the people that they're baptizing and seeing saved, and the churches that they're planting. It's the missionaries we've sent out, the neighborhoods we've engaged, the international students we've loved, the college students we've ran after. Like, that's our treasure. That's our treasure. And we're going, I want to give every penny to that. I want to convert all my proverbial Blockbuster stock into that and go, this is all for your kingdom. So would we be people who do that? Convert our treasure from here on earth to there in heaven. And I want you to know, this isn't a sneaky plea for me to ask you to give more money to the church. Like, maybe you converting your treasure doesn't look like anything to City Light, and it's giving to the orphans in our city, or the poor in our city, or the among the nations, or some other amazing nonprofit. I'm not saying it should impact our bottom line at all. I'm just saying you don't want to keep your treasure here on earth. It will literally rot. You want to invest it, pull it all out, and put it in. It's Blockbuster. It's going bankrupt. It's collapsing. You want to put it into a kingdom that is eternal. And I'm also not saying that necessarily the obedient call for here is to cash everything out and give your whole savings to give away. I'm not counting that out. It's what Jesus told the rich young ruler to do. But what would this look like? I think it's just literally ideally thinking about converting your stock and going, everything about me wants to invest in this kingdom. If you're opening up Robinhood, and looking at your investments more than you're thinking about your eternal investments, that's problematic. And maybe you do open up your investments every day, but as you're seeing those increase, or whatever that number is, you're going, oh, I can't wait to give more and invest more into the kingdom. As my investments here increase, my investments there increase. That would be this sweet thing, that you would see your budget and giving so intertwined as a pivotal part of your generosity that it would be just as crucial and just as normative in your budget as the money you spend on your food or your mortgage or your phone bill. That would be so clear. Warren Wiersbe said, it's so brilliant. He said, what we keep, we lose. And what we give to God, we keep, and he adds interest to it. It's crazy. What we keep, we lose. What we give to God, we keep, and he adds interest to it. And if I can just be honest to close, I don't do a great job of this. Kristen and I give consistently. We've given, all that. We try to increase our giving, and we've tried to give to other things other than our church. But there's a time where I just can feel reluctant about it. And like, man, if this thing didn't come out every single month automatically, I don't know if it would come out this month. There's just spaces like that where I'm just not crazy excited about it. And I'm thinking, man, what could I spend here? Or any type of other money we've gotten from other situations. The first thing I think of is like, how can I spend that? Or how can I? And it's just like, I can be so wicked, and I can have my finances so set on here and now and not forever. And my future, I can just get my plans, I can get my idea, I can have it set, and I'm rigid about it. I just don't want it to change, and I can think that I have control, and I can get in my space and know my insurance and all this. And I'm just like, I don't know about you, but I am vastly failing at these verses. And the good news of the gospel isn't that here's some good insight, here's how to do it better. Like, that's not the good news of the gospel. I hope that's good advice. There's good advice innate in God's word that's helping us actually fix our eyes on forever, so that would form our finances and our future. But the good news of the gospel is that we will fail at these things, but Jesus never did. In Luke 9, 52, it says that Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem, that he planned his future and went, that's where I'm going. What was in Jerusalem waiting for him? A wooden cross that he would die on. And then you get Hebrews 12:2 that says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. So he submits to the will of the Father, Deo Volente, and he goes to the cross bearing the mountain of sin that you and I have accumulated, so that you and I could spend eternity in heaven with him. And then you get 2 Corinthians 8:9 that says, the grace of our Lord Jesus, that though he was rich, eternally satisfied in heaven, it says he became poor so that his poverty we might become rich. So Jesus gives up all that he has in heaven, and he comes to earth, puts on flesh and bone, and he comes and he dwells, and he's hated and he's misunderstood, and he ultimately is killed on a cross so that you and I could enjoy eternity with him forever, be rich in relationship with God. And we look to those things and go, he's done it all for us. But he's also done it as an example to go, I want to live like that. I want to be like Jesus. And I said earlier that the best example of unrequited love is our love for money, but it's not. There's one other one, and it's God's love for us. You think about this love where he's just loving us like crazy, and we just don't seem to love him back. Like, it's so shallow. I'm going, he's crazy about us, and he bought us a forever by his blood, and we're just fixed on our future little plannings and our little finances here, and he's going, man, I bought something so much better for you. I want you to enjoy it.